Opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not WSTU. WSTU does not endorse any products mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU.
The Treasure Coast longest-running local talk radio show is on the air. The Treasure Coast Forum, brought to you by...
Makes sense.
Get interested, get educated, get involved, and give us a call with your opinions at 220-9788. And here's your host of the Treasure Coast Forum.
Welcome back to the Treasure Coast Forum at 1450 WSTU. I'm joined here with Frank and a couple of our friends from South Fork and Martin County High School.
And you are?
I'm Sam Crombie, Martin County High School.
I'm Reese Gavitt from South Fork High School.
Nick Campy, Martin County High School.
Dylan DeWall, South Fork High School.
Okay, we have to get you on a... Try it again.
Dylan DeWall.
I got to find a microphone that works for you.
There you go.
His headphones also.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, my headphones are...
A couple technical difficulties.
You're on 4. You should try it again.
Dylan DeWall,
No.
South Fork
Nope.
High School.
No.
Oh, what a
Uh-oh.
shame. I guess you've been silenced.
Guess I'm not going to be able to hear Dylan on today's broadcast.
You're going to have to
Yeah,
share
we
the
can
mic with
share the
Mr.
wealth here.
Campy there.
That's fine.
All right.
Mr. Camp.
All right, so here we are. We're kind of all together, and representing a couple of the high schools anyways, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Youth and government's well represented.
Absolutely.
So that's a cool thing. Now, Lee Gross can't make it. He is on a bus with a bunch of screaming students.
Yeah.
So making a lot of noise. He was going to try to call in, he said, but it was a little bit too noisy.
Yeah.
A little
Sadly.
JRT.
Lee will be missed for today's broadcast.
Yes, yeah. But anyways, but we make up for it with the quantity of clever students.
Of
right?
course.
There we
Yes,
go.
in addition.
Intellectual wealth.
Yes, we have an intellectual well here that we've dipped into. And so lots going on. You guys heard about the Dow going down about 720 points today?
Really? I didn't hear that,
Really?
actually.
I did not also.
A little bit
Right.
taste of the trade war beginning here.
Right.
Oh, because of the tariffs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that was announced. The tariffs mostly on China trade, and the big issue that the president had, which prompted, of course, during the run up to the election, a lot of conversation was about the unfair trade that we had with China.
Right, the deficit.
Right. Well, and that caused the deficit, but the deficit is one thing, but the unfair trade exacerbates it, right? So what the issue that the president said is, look, if we're going to have trade, let's have it fair. Don't steal our intellectual property.
Right.
And he actually put some numbers to that during the campaign. There wasn't any hard numbers; it was just a lot of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now he was able to add some numbers, and even those numbers, he even said himself, was somewhat nebulous. But he tried to give some to try to quantify it in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he says, "Look at," he says, "This is. I think it's the carrot and the stick approach. That's my take on it."
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, "Look, I'm putting down the hammer. You guys going to play right, and not steal our intellectual property. If you're going to use our intellectual property, you need to pay for it, right? Otherwise, we're just going to, slap some tariffs on anything coming in, which, obviously that means increased cost to all of us consumers too.
Mm-hmm.
So Wall Street, had a meltdown, for want of a
definitely.
better term, right? And I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I do have an initial question, if any of you guys
Sure.
can help me out here. Are these tariffs specific to specific countries, or are they specific
It's
to certain
China.
materials and goods?
This particular tariff announcement was on products and goods, but it was directed specifically at China.
Yeah, I think it was like $50 billion worth of tariffs. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's definitely Trump administration trying to juggle between protecting domestic industry while also balancing with the issues that we have with trade deficits and different issues. Honestly, I think it's more of a strong arm at this point in order to get China to bend to our needs, but I don't really think it's going to be something that's going to be long term. So the stock market reacts how the stock market reacts, but I think it's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction
You
to the
think
issue.
it's a blip in the radar?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
Yeah, at least initially, I would agree.
Especially since we've seen, since Trump took office, like the volatility and the growth of the stock market. Again, tomorrow could rise another 500 points and recover to right where it was. So again, yeah, it's just a little blip.
Are these tariffs in place yet or no?
No, I think these are proposed announced tariffs, but I imagine they will take place relatively
But
soon.
I feel like for sure, at least this reaction, if they're not even in place yet, it's just going to be like investors being wary of the situation. But until there's like hard evidence about the economy and stuff like that, then it's just going to be reaction in just a short term.
All right. Any thoughts?
I'm not really familiar with the tariff situation right now. How?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
How? I'm curious as to like what exactly they affect. Like,
Well, intellectual property will have to probably has a lot to do with the software, computers, things. China's not been bashful about taking concepts and ideas and just duplicating it. And so that's theft of property.
okay.
So that's when and that represents loss to the companies that do the research and development to create these products and not services, but these products or ideas. And then somebody for a country to sponsor, China is essentially just a big conglomerate company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
For want of a better term, that's the way I kind of look at it.
Centrally planned economy.
Yeah. Yes. And so, they try to, and of course it cuts costs when they don't have to do the R&D.
Right.
They just have to take something and just copy it.
Yeah.
So.
And at least considering China's past, or like socialism, communism and stuff, like the consolidated central state-owned businesses and stuff, which they've been lax about, it makes their industry like much more targeted to what they want to do and stuff like that. So if all of China is making goods specific to American needs, American industry, which is not fragmented per se, but like privately owned and diversified, can't compete with massive, just population alone, 1 billion versus some 300-something million. American industry isn't consolidated enough to the fact that it can compete with China's central and targeted industry.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we want to avoid banging on the table.
Oh.
That's all. Yeah, that's all.
Apologies.
Yeah, it's all right. It's
Dylan.
like popcorn going off in my head.
What are your thoughts, Dylan?
Well, in this situation, like you said, I'm also not as informed in this particular situation, but I do also think that the stock market will recover, pretty soon, and that with this tariff here, it will not last too long since we rely so heavily on China for many of our goods and services.
Yeah. I
And
think so.
They could easily just stop producing for us.
Yeah.
So.
Especially since, the relationship between the United States and China isn't necessarily that we can cut off overnight, right? Like, with a country like Venezuela, if we want to sanction them or, place an embargo on their products, it's not going to cripple our economy more than it's going to cripple their economy. But with China, whether it be political, economic, social sanctions, whatever it may be that we're impacting their economy, it's never going to last. It's just we rely on each other too much for our trade and development. And so, again, it hasn't been implemented yet, and like I said before, I'll reiterate that I think it's just trying to strong arm a change in Chinese policy, because for too long it has been unchecked, like Nick said, and so hopefully this is a first step in recovering what we've lost through Chinese trade.
Yeah, and people say that like China has all the power in the situation, but I would definitely beg to differ, because however small our number might be compared to China, the strength of the American dollar and the purchasing power of our nation makes China have to be a little bit flexible to our needs here.
Right. And that's even a problem. That's one of the reasons why we have trade deficits, and because they inflate the U.S. dollar so that we're getting a lot less than they are getting from, importing from the United States than we are importing from China. So it's just a whole array of issues that, again, under the tough economic policy of the Trump administration, hopefully there's a solution in the near future.
Right. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that, like, while these tariffs are, they're definitely going to, hopefully, I should say, be beneficial to our economy and stuff. If these tariffs are in place, I feel like the price of goods here, domestic manufacturing, domestic industry, all these things are really good, but they also cost more money because that's the first reason that we started importing from China and outsourcing our jobs there and stuff, is that it's cheaper. So as consumers, we're going to see higher prices regardless, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right, my take is, because I remember when actually Nixon went to China to
Right.
open up trade in China, so
Yeah.
I kind of have a little perspective of history, right? And the whole idea of China, of the United States and China getting together and in trade was to promote China to be part of the world of commerce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And because they were, struggling, developing country. All right. Back in the early 70s, really pretty tough economy.
Yeah,
right?
after Mao Zedong.
Right, really tough. So Nixon saw that as an opportunity, and the way he sold the opportunity to the American business community and the American public was, there's a lot of people over there,
Yeah.
right? And if we make products that they are interested in, just the sheer quantity of what we could sell to them, it could be great for business.
Absolutely.
And every president since Nixon has used that suggestion. The
Right.
problem is we haven't enjoyed that kind of business.
Yeah.
Okay, but China has, and so Trump is like myself. He's got I'm about 15, 20 years younger than him, but enough younger. But he lived through this too, and he
Right.
saw these changes, and he also saw that all the promise that was given to America by getting into business or trading with China and bringing them into our family of nations. The whole suggestion is, okay, they would maybe democratize more and
Right.
loosen up, and they've done some of that, right? But the problem is they haven't played on an equal field,
Yeah.
right? So that's my take on it. So it's kind of, he's trying to move that needle back a little bit and say, look at, we're cool with you doing business with us. We'd like to do business with you too, but don't steal from us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just to note what you said about Donald Trump living through that era, it's interesting because I watched an interview by Oprah of Donald Trump in the early 1990s, and even then he was talking about how countries like China are ripping us off in trade, and it
Right.
just goes to show you that for almost 3 decades now it's been going on, and even longer than that. So it's
Right.
just
70
hopefully,
years, really.
Yeah, it's been
it's been a long time since World War II.
Yeah.
We were a big asset to China during World War II.
Yeah.
In fact, before we got involved in World War II officially, Americans signed up to fly for against Japan for China, and I guess I think they did a movie about it too,
Yeah.
right? The Flying Tigers, I think they called them.
Oh, yeah, I
Right?
have seen that.
But
Yeah.
that also
Yeah.
brings up a little bit of complexity too, because it depends on your definition of China in the time, because you have a bunch of different sides there, and then at least considering history, Nixon's visit to China originally in the 60s was China was obviously a newish country by definition because of communism and everything.
Right.
So even though they didn't see eye to eye with the Soviets, so there was a lot of disagreement there. And when the Chinese were arguing with the Soviets, Nixon actually used it as
As a leverage,
yeah,
as a
as
wedge
leverage
tool. Yeah.
to
Mhm.
put America into the Chinese situation.
We're in good graces.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I feel like America is definitely partially responsible for opening up China to the world and trade and everything, and that if
Which is not a bad thing.
not at all, not
Right.
at all, because
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, considering history's example, China's been integral to the world economy and everything. And while I'm not saying that we should ignore them or bow to China's will, I'm saying that America should stand up for itself
Yeah.
here.
We've just let them step on our toes for a while now. and
Right.
We need
However
to stand
cheap it
up.
might be and however much motivation that might offer us, there's something to be said for protecting American jobs, American industry, and American commerce.
Absolutely.
All right. And but at what cost? I mean,
Right.
how much pain do you think American citizens are willing to accept when they go to Walmart and suddenly an item that costs $2 on the shelf is $3.50 or $4.
True.
Right.
But I feel like in promoting American industry, it opens up so many jobs and
Right.
so many other aspects of the economy that, like, while obviously prices are going to rise,
Yeah.
they'd be made up for in the creation of jobs, the
Maybe bringing back some foreign industry back
and
domestically.
the,
Right.
expanding American industry so that way exporting goods would be more profitable for us as well.
Well, one of the interesting dynamics also that takes place, the argument is, okay, if we can get them to trade with us on a fair level, Americans will do well, right?
Right.
So if a foreign product, let's say a foreign automobile, costs suddenly more than it used to cost because of the way they were, because of what the pricing structure of the company that was selling that car. Okay,
Right.
so suddenly that car now costs more. So you would think, okay, American car companies, now we can compete.
Yeah, right. It favors American industry.
But guess what happens? American industry,
They have to rise too.
they raise their price of their cars. They go, oh, well, that car costs
Right.
more, so we're going to charge more for our, because maybe they have been, and this isn't always discussed, but what happens is maybe they kind of taken a smaller margin on their product that they sell domestically because they're trying to compete against that foreign product.
Right.
Now they say, okay, now we get an opportunity to make money. So it again, the consumer doesn't win, because they're not getting that lower price from the American commodity. So it's just fascinating how that dynamic works, because the scholars that think about, the think tank scholars say, well,
Right.
okay, if you do it this way, and it doesn't always work out the way they think it does, or
Yeah.
it should.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully China doesn't call our bluff on trying to get them to reform, and hopefully we see net positive. I don't think that'll get to a scenario, just like, speaking from historical precedents, I really don't think that will end up actually implementing these tariffs. So it'll be more of a condition area, like, hey, you need to stop violating intellectual property rights, stop inflating our dollar, and then, we won't implement these tariffs. So hopefully it doesn't come to that end scenario.
Definitely a lot to consider.
Yeah, we'll see.
So this tariff, just to be clear, was implemented to stop China from stealing our intellectual property, right? That was the sole reason for it.
Primarily.
Will be.
Yeah.
Has yet to.
Yeah, it has yet to.
Right.
All right. So it's not really going to help to solve the problem of them taking jobs from us.
Well, I was under the impression that it was just to prevent them from stealing American ideas, like for instance, like cheap knockoffs of American products and such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I'm aware of, like, Tesla is a good example of American auto industry and stuff. But in the past 5 years, after Tesla's seen so much success, there's so many Chinese companies that produce like identical versions of like Tesla's American electric cars and stuff.
Right.
So I think that's a prime example of intellectual property and how it affects us.
But are these tariffs going to prevent them from doing so? I mean, how? In
Well,
what
the tariff,
way?
the tariff would say, okay, if this product that you're producing matches or is an exact copy of a brand that is already being sold, and you're not paying them for the right to use their product, then you can't bring it here, or if you do bring it here, you're going to have to pay a penalty.
Right.
And
Right.
who determines whether or not it's a knockoff or if it's
Well, that's the part of the people that do that in government.
Right.
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah,
And then-
because you have to ask for permission to bring in. You just can't put stuff in a cargo ship and bring it over.
Right.
Yeah.
hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like such an age of innovation as today, that like the idea of putting a tariff on intellectual property and stuff like that is going to be a lot more effective than specific like tariffs on aluminum and raw materials and stuff
Yeah.
like that, because obviously America, I feel like, is a pioneer in technology and other things, and that our ideas are circulated throughout the world. So like
Right.
when an opportunistic country like China sees ways to take American technology, produce it for cheaper either through, I don't know,
Right.
like paying their workers 10 cents a week.
Yeah,
or
I
something
mean,
like
we
that.
can't pretend, and that's such a good point because, like, we can't pretend that we have a disposable part of our population, 500 million plus,
Yeah.
that literally just
Children.
works for small wages and will continue to be burdened by these jobs that because we aren't an industrial country like China, and we still need to have a relationship with China because they are a country who, because of lack of modernization in rural areas and because of this large population, has been able to form a industry around cheap manufacturing. So there, as much as I want to pretend like I want to protect like domestic industry and like U.S. business, there has to be some common ground in between. We want to protect U.S. industry and grow our own capabilities, but at the same time, we're never going to be not fully reliant on China. We're always going to have a dependence, and it's important to have that dependence because it's not just economic. It's a political dependence, and especially if we want to talk about the argument of trying to promote democracy in China and in the Asian region, that's definitely a net positive. So. That's at least my take.
I mean, we're consumers ever since like the end of World War II. After we stopped manufacturing weapons for everybody,
right?
We've all just been consumers, and so yeah, it feels like it's never going to really go back to that at this point.
But an interesting argument I heard recently. Two things I want to say before we go to break. First of all, on the steel and aluminum tariffs that were announced earlier during World War II, if we had, we don't produce a lot of our own steel anymore. We have to import most of our steel. Okay, if we needed to import steel during World War II, we probably would have had a different result.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay.
That like while now in peacetime and everything, and I hate to consider what war would be coming next, but like the existence of, and it's not like our resources are going to run away. Like we still have coal deposits, we still have iron deposits, oil and stuff like that. But like domestic industry in times of peace is nice. It's obviously good for the economy, but it's vital during times of strife and war and stuff like that. Where we can't rely on foreign.
And you think about all the empty plants that have gone idle over the many years. For example, a few weeks ago, shortly after the tariff was announced for steel and aluminum, a company in Illinois, Southern Illinois, announced that they were bringing back 500 steel workers, but it was going to take a few weeks or maybe a month before they can actually start producing product.
I think that's a great idea. I think we should definitely become more reliant on ourselves, which not only one supplies us with our materials without having to import, but also jobs to more people.
Right.
Like how it was, I don't know.
And that almost happened, like I said, 500 jobs that had been idle since 2015.
But then we also have to look at maybe the net negative of now, whatever, major trading partner that we have that supplies us with our steel, maybe because of that tariff, it's going to be de-incentivizing industry. We may be cutting economic, political ties. So, I absolutely agree, right, that we have to be able to balance, domestic industry, which is very important, with being able to maintain our ties with other countries. So,
and also on that negative side, when we do use our natural resources now, we might not have enough for later when we do need them.
That's
we
true.
have no trade partners to have in the future.
Okay. All right. Well, pretty good conversation. We'll pick this up on the other side of this break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, now it's time for today's Southeast AgNet Report, brought to you by Everglades Farm Equipment, a family-owned business for the past 50 years with 10 Florida locations, including Fort Pierce, Okeechobee, and Loxahatchee. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Welcome back to WSTU 1450, the Treasure Coast Forum. Well, I'm still here with my... what?
We're back.
Oh, yeah, we're back. With my 3 high school friends. Do you want to...
Nick is here still?
We're all still here.
Still Sam, still Nick.
For anybody new tuning in.
So
All right.
All
right, so we have a different
intro there.
Yeah, thank you. A different topic of conversation now. The Maryland high school shooting.
Yes.
That happened 2-3 days ago.
Yeah.
I think it was last week.
It was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
Tuesday this week.
It was Tuesday this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it only lasted a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was amazingly.
Was it literally a minute? Or
Literally a minute,
Wow.
yes. The resource officer was nearby.
Uh-huh.
He heard the gunfire. He responded almost immediately. Actually exchanged gunfire with the gunman, who was a 17-year-old.
He was 17-year-old Austin Rollins.
It's unclear as of now whether the gunman actually shot himself or if the police officer
Yeah, that
shot
was my
him.
question.
Yeah. Well, the supposedly the gunfire between the gunman and the resource officer took place almost simultaneously.
Yeah.
That's the reports that I heard.
Right.
And so my take on it is they exchanged gunfire.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I just think that it's interesting because, like, just on a because there's so much to talk about.
Right.
But I think on just like a general, very interesting theme is that, from what we know so far, he shot one person, which was the girl he just broke up with, and that bullet, whatever, a couple shots he took at his previous girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, one of the bullets, a stray bullet, hit someone else, and then that was it.
right.
So as far as we know, he was just targeting his girlfriend.
But how
and
can we
that
know
was
that?
it.
Yeah.
But you
How
don't
can we
know.
know
We
that?
don't know that,
I
but I just think it's interesting that if it was 1 minute that he was in a busy classroom before kids, right before kids went into class, if it was him and many other kids, and only people that he could seem to get a hold of were his ex-girlfriend, and just by chance a stray bullet hit another kid, it seems I wouldn't really consider it a mass shooting. It just seems like he was targeting his
shooting.
girlfriend. Yeah,
But
But the question then becomes, what happens if the resource officer wasn't there in time,
Yeah.
and he
Right.
shot her, and then what? Does he?
But I
does he
mean,
run out
he
of the
wasn't.
class?
I mean, if you consider like what on time is, it's like when he started shooting. He wasn't there when he started shooting. It was within a minute. And
Yeah,
again,
but-
we don't, and we still don't know enough information about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas to know how long he was shooting. I believe it was 5-6 minutes. It was.
It was almost 9 minutes. I
9
think.
minutes.
It was a pretty prolonged period of time.
Right.
And the resource officer that was nearby, he was 2-3 minutes away.
Yeah.
And he set up a perimeter rather than moving in on the assailant, right?
Right.
So think about, and so the father of the one that's the one father that's really been vocal about this whole situation.
the one in Maryland.
No,
or
the one in Florida.
Someone
Florida.
else.
He's gone on the national news and all that. He said his daughter actually was up on the second floor where she was shot. So had the resource officer come into the building and engaged the assailant, he would have never made it to the second floor. His daughter would have
Or
never,
even the third floor too.
right, or third floor, or wherever. He wouldn't
Right.
have left his position where he was on the first floor anyways.
Yeah.
And so many lives would have been saved.
And that's why.
That's why the father is just beside himself with
And that's also why, regardless of the motive in Maryland, this officer should definitely be praised for his actions,
is.
because I feel like there was no, as tragic as the situation is, there is no better way that could have been resolved than how it was.
right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because this is like the polar opposite of what happened in Florida. Being in Florida, the kid walked in, shot. He bought the gun legally. He shot, and then the resource officer just made a perimeter. Meanwhile, in Maryland, he bought the gun. What? I was told that he bought the gun illegally,
Yes.
and the resource officer went in and just resolved the situation where it was when he
Right.
found it.
Because he's I think in Maryland you have to be 21.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, you do.
And
it's,
and to own a handgun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he came by the gun illegally, and so that's been an interesting story to unwind that, to figure out
Yeah.
how that all transpired too. And that's a big part of it, because they said, well, before it was assault rifles. Okay, fine. The AR-15, more specifically. Now it's the was a Glock handgun, right? It was a 9mm Glock, is what it was.
So, just because I just want to clarify,
Yeah.
I believe that the gun that was bought, that was used in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting by Nicholas Cruz, it was bought legally.
Yes.
But if I'm correct, it was bought by the parents, his parents, before they passed away.
Were these the foster parents or
Not the foster parents. So he had a set of parents.
Well, it was
that
purchased
passed
legally,
away.
because let me tell you what happened on the Florida shooting. The AR-15 that was purchased legally, because you can, unless the law has been changed. I think the Florida is changing it right now, but at that time, you can buy a long gun, and as long as you pass the background check. And he passed the background check because all those multitude of instances where the police had come to the home and there were complaints and all that, no paperwork was actually filed.
Right.
That's crazy.
And that is why he passed the background check. Because had there been any of those instances with reported filings, he would have never passed. It would have never gotten that gun.
Right, because he was never Baker acted by when he was in school.
Ironically, the resource officer in question and the Stoneman Douglas shooting is the same resource officer that recommended that he be Baker acted a couple of years ago. So that's a great, tremendous irony, and yet that never happened.
And on the other side, in Maryland, we have some of the strictest gun laws in the state. There's you have to go through training. There's a lot of different things you have to do in order to get even a handgun.
Right.
And to see that that this teenager was even able to get a gun there really raised into question a lot of things.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Right, yeah, that needs to be looked into, there's no doubt. I'm sure they are, the authorities.
Right.
They, and unfortunately, trying to unwind things when after the fact, and then you try to understand what took place and why, and then, but with the Florida shooting, and I've said it before, and a lot of you guys weren't here during the past shows when we've had this conversation, but to my thinking, this really represents a failure of government.
Yeah,
I think so.
I mean, I know a few people in Broward County, or people who know people, that said that they knew Cruz, everybody knew how he was. Like, his Instagram had like dead animals and just pictures of guns, and he was reported many times, but no filing was done. Right, which is it's crazy to think about how someone that dangerous, who turned out to be as dangerous as people thought, just went
under the radar.
It's not like just the school officials knew about it too. Like, we have literally the FBI field office in Miami or whatever knew about this specific individual, and nothing, like, nobody acted.
Well, it never got to the field office in Miami. So when you call the FBI, it goes to a central phone number, and then they have to pass it on, and it never got passed on to the Miami office.
Regardless,
that was one of the failures of government. It was another failure.
Regardless, the FBI themselves were at least made aware of it, and nothing happened.
And
exactly.
Another dynamic of it that I think is really interesting is that, since he's, gone into police custody, he's exhibited that he is a sane individual, and as far as we know, he didn't have any clinically disposed mental illnesses. He was just an individual who maybe was a little more aggressive, or whatever may happen, whatever we figure out.
I think the word they use is troubled.
Right, he's troubled, but he's a sane individual.
Yeah.
And so it leads us to, it begs the question, what could we have done to stop it? Why did he snap and commit this?
Right.
And, how does this, affect mental health? Because I know that there is a large debate in America against, gun laws, gun rights. And I think that there's two things that we can all agree on. One, we need to eliminate gun violence, right? I think everyone can concede that that's something that we want to eliminate.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then also we need mental health reform, because whether or not you believe that this has to do with guns or mental health still is an underlying issue. In the Colorado movie theater shooting a couple years back, right, that individual was mentally ill and he got his hands on the gun. Same thing with the Newtown shooting. So whatever issue you want to make it, that's fine. But I think that a real key point of it is that it is mental health, and there has to be something done about it.
I'd be hesitant using the word sane to describe an individual as Nicholas Cruz, because even considering his past, to describe it as colorful would be definitely an understatement. Because, if I remember correctly, the family himself that had adopted Cruz himself had multiple times they reported him to the police. I'm pretty sure.
About 45, 46 times.
His Instagram, the things he said, how he acted around his family, how he acted in school, all of these things combined do not paint a picture of a sane individual or a sound individual.
Right.
And I feel like our definitions of mental illness and stuff, if this individual is not included in those definitions, then there's something wrong with those
Again,
definitions.
it will be up to the court psychologist to determine, but just from at least what I've heard and what I've read from what he said, and he's apologized for the incident, a lot of different things, he seems like he was an individual that was, again, troubled, and, whatever mental level sanity he was at, depending on how we can measure that, it's still an issue.
All right, we'll pick this up when we come back. We have to take our last break. And another thought we want to touch on is that he had actually asked that if they took the death penalty off the table, he would plead guilty. Interesting. All right. We'll return after this break.
And hello, everybody, and welcome back to WSTU 1450. This is the Treasure Coast Forum, and I'm one of your hosts, Nick.
All right, well done, Nick. All
yes,
right.
good job,
Thank you,
Nick.
everybody.
All right.
I'm new to this.
Big improvement.
Well, to be fair, This is not Nick's first time.
Yeah.
No.
So
I still don't know
okay.
what I did wrong.
that's all right.
We live.
You tried.
You got to just keep dipping into the well, and then you got it.
Yeah.
Back next
You know,
Just
that's
keep
it.
going.
Oh, I'll be
That's
back.
it.
Don't worry.
All right. Yeah, you'll have it down in no time. All right. So we only have about 10 minutes left, but we want to look at all the other things going on in the world. So we touched on a few things already, and let's see what our friends over at CNN have to talk about. They always have interesting things.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's CNN.
Well, right now, while my page refreshes here, let's see now. Rand Paul is reading all 2,232 pages of the spending bill and is live tweeting even as we speak. This is a 37-minute story.
Wow.
I will never
pretty
get tired
fresh.
of Rand Paul's.
Yeah, no, that's a
Yes.
good allocation of his time since he, got jumped by one of his neighbors and he got like beaten up. He can now be he can read his bill.
Plenty of times he has
Yeah.
to sit down and read
I think
while he's rehabbing his ribs, right? Let's see now. What else is going on? Some interesting things. Here's a fun thing that only our friends at CNN would tell us about. The report is that Saudi Crown Prince bragged that Kushner was in his pocket.
uh-oh.
All right, so of course that you'll
Wow.
only find that on CNN.
Interesting.
And
I wonder what he means. Like if he was like literally in his pocket, or
Well,
I mean, yeah,
Well,
maybe he has a big pocket. I don't know.
maybe he has a Kushner doll.
yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like one of those like voodoo
Right.
dolls.
Voodoo
Right,
doll.
voodoo
Yeah.
doll. There it is.
He's like he's his puppet.
It could be.
Kushner gives him some
And
money.
and of course this is again this is an analysis from our friends at CNN, and they say why Trump's China's tariffs are likely to be bad for him. So
That's
that-
interesting.
That is interesting.
Maybe bad
Yeah.
for him, but maybe not bad for the economy. We're getting somewhere with CNN. That's
well,
good.
it could be. It could be. So we've got. So anyway, so that's just some interesting little the way our different people spin the news, and so it's good to get it from all different sources. Let's see now. We got some clips here. Also, the Austrian serial bomber. He was 23 years old.
Really.
Yeah, almost 24.
Was that the guy that was mailing bombs to people?
Yeah, around
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was an
Where is
interesting-
that at? Because I haven't heard from that.
He
in the-
is-
He was what? Yes, was it yesterday? I think
2 days ago.
a day or two ago they finally captured him. They
Oh, really?
They actually were behind him. He pulled out of a parking lot. He realized that they were chasing him. They were behind him. He pulled over and detonated the
Yeah.
last bomb he had with him. And
It's crazy.
yeah, and so there was a police officer that was charging the car at the time
Yeah.
he detonated the bombs. That officer got injured slightly, but he said they say
And
he will
I
recover.
don't think there is much more left of the bomber, though. So, I mean, justice.
Well,
did he
there was an
did he get
interesting.
himself in that last?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, he did.
Yeah,
That car's gone.
Well, what did he stand for? Like, where
Well,
was he, or was he just?
he was homeschooled.
Okay.
He
There you go.
His tweets and his so you don't know where he was not very. I don't know how social he was. He didn't graduate from junior college. He went almost 2 years to junior college, and didn't finish. Nothing wrong with that. I nearly finished 2 years of junior college myself, and so nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But so there's just some interesting.
Again, some people just
Yeah,
like havoc.
Is that what it is? Or
we don't know.
Or is it something?
Well, I think
mean-
a lot of people are looking into the fact that did he play video games? What was his level of interest?
Right.
And
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not, calling him stupid under any circumstance, but
Right.
clearly
Some of
he
these-
had enough skill to create these bombs and be strategic enough to send them out to different areas. It's
right. So it was interesting how the Unabomber, which was before your time, took him 17 years for the FBI to catch the Unabomber.
wow.
I heard he had
This took 6 days.
he wrote a book called the Unabomber Manifesto.
Yes.
I was looking
Well,
into
yeah,
that.
it was probably turned into a book.
Yeah,
but
it was
yes,
turned into a book.
It was a manifesto. Yes.
It is-
It was
it's
his rantings.
It's interesting the stuff that he was talking about. I mean, one of his big philosophies is that I guess humans should have never evolved past a certain point. Like industrialization and agriculture was all a mistake, and everything. It's funny what you said is everything past the creation of a storage container was a mistake.
That's going back to people like Cruz. Like, this guy might have the intellect and the ability to dream up these grand schemes that are totally ill-advised and idiotic by our notions, but these people possess the capacity to arm themselves and commit these atrocious crimes, design these devices, build these devices, and yet we still don't call them insane.
It's all very interesting.
Yes, it is. Well, we had a very productive hour, gentlemen.
We did.
Yeah.
And we're representing South Fork and Martin County high schools today, and hopefully maybe next week we get somebody from Jensen Beach to roll.
And
on.
maybe even Clark. We'll see.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah. All right. Clark Learning Center. Yeah. Very good. Okay.
Bring out Griffin.
Okay. Well, excellent, gentlemen. We thank you very much for participating in today's show, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Absolutely.
Good
I'll
night,
be
Treasure
here.
Coast.
Goodbye, Treasure Coast.
Bye, Mom.